Hey YouTube, we just witnessed what I believe is the greatest comeback in Counter-Strike history. And I'm going to put my money on the fact that it's the greatest comeback in esports history. Let me tell you about it. Now, on the date that this video is posted, we're a couple weeks late, so why don't we first give some context. This is the ESL Cologne Major, the biggest stage for Counter-Strike, probably the biggest event that you could hold for Counter-Strike, and one of the greatest crowds that you could have. Fortunately though, we don't get the greatest teams. We have NRG and Big. Now, these are two historic teams. Don't get me wrong, they've been in the scene a really long time, and you're gonna know a lot of these players. So why don't we meet the players? We're gonna start off with the opposing team, the team that pulled it out of the hat and won. Big, from Germany. This is their home field. Maybe it's some home field advantage here, but we got Tabson, JDC, Faven, Blame F, and Grix. Now, some of those players you know, some of them you don't. I know Tabson has been a super storied player, not the most accomplished though. Okay, and to get the point across here, not the biggest assembly of stars by any means, and that goes the same way for their opponent. In this case, the Folly team. That's NRG, the North American team, been around for a long time. Nitro, Sonic, OC, Grim, and Bro. They have been at LANs before, they've been in the hunt, but not really had too much success. They're quite a middling team, and it's not too much of a surprise to see them lose and to see them go out. But 2-2, we get a 2-2 matchup. It's win or go home, and these teams are going back and forth. First two maps, both go to overtime, both really hard to figure out who's going to win, and neither team really seems to take it by the horns and make the game their own. But let's talk about Mirage from a perspective of these two teams' history. Now, we're going to put a couple graphics on screen, and I think it's going to be important for you. More of the story, if you don't want to look at any of that, we don't want to talk about any in-depth stats or anything like that. These teams, fairly decent, you know, they have around a 60% winning rate. But look at the rounds. Both NRG and Big win their CT rounds, and they do not win their T rounds. They are not a T-sided team. Now just remember that. It's not the fact that it doesn't say everything, but you know, that might come into play later. So, we want to talk about some of the rounds. Now, NRG comes into this game and they win the pistol. Pretty convincingly, looks pretty good. Now, one of the most pivotal rounds in all of Counter-Strike, that's going to be the first gun round, right? Doesn't matter. A lot of times, if you could lose the pistol, if you win the gun round, you're right back in it. You don't win that first gun round, and it's all of a sudden a 5-round lead, and that's exactly what happens. So right here, you can tell NRG gets this first gun round off the board, and they continue that momentum a whole hell of a lot. We have the first gun round, couple of ecos again, and in these subsequent gun rounds, NRG comes to play and is absolutely styling on them. Grim is hitting every shot, aggressive pushes are working, Nitro is leading the charge. He is top of the leaderboard here at round number 8. Okay? Everything is going NRG's way. But again, we get to the end and it's 12-0 NRG. Now, I don't think anybody would have predicted this, but if you listen to the players, just one more round. Just one more round. But there's a slight issue. Remember that whole CT T-side thing? Big is not very good on T-side. NRG is fairly good on CT. And it starts off with Big winning the pistol. And Big wins a couple more rounds. NRG is forced onto a couple half buys, and they don't win those either. And it snowballs, and it snowballs. And the best chance that NRG has, they get into a 2-on-2. Sonic is able to make it a 2-on-1, and Tabson, one of the longest standing, might be the longest standing player in Counter-Strike, with a clean 2 kills, 1v2 situation, gets the defuse, and that round goes to the wayside as well. So big. Everything is going their way. And wouldn't you know it, overtime comes. And guess who starts off on CT side but Big? And just as every round has gone before, every CT round goes in favor of Big Clan. So they're 1 round away. And in that round, Nitro, the captain, sneaks in, lets them all pass. As some famous casters have said, the trigger discipline is there, the shots aren't. Gets nothing, a lot of damage, but just like that, the chances go out the window, and Energy is not even able to win a singular round in overtime. And just like that, the game is over.
This was a game that could have been over in about 15 minutes as Big go 12 in a row to lock in OT. They do it in historic fashion. 16 rounds straight. Big Clan are going to stage 2.
Now that you know how it happened, how it went down, it's time to talk about how unlikely this is. Now, Mirage is a map that's been in the game since the inception, since I've been playing, since I'm aware of, and teams know it really well. Even in CS2, it's been in there the whole time. Teams know how to play it. Teams know how to win it. T-side knows what utility to use and how to get space on the map. And for something like this match overview right here is just mind-blowing, right? It's something that I think is really important to look at, because when I watched the game first, it didn't really occur to me, right? 12-0 to then 12-0. But that means neither team got a single round on the T side until the very last round, that Big won to win the match. That's unheard of. I mean, that doesn't happen. And just to push that point even further, look at the stats. We can look at the stats right here, and Mirage is just about as 50-50 as you can get. Slight edge here that the CTs win slightly more, but it's incredibly even. It's one of the most even maps that I think we have in Counter-Strike. And I think that's a testament to just how well people know how to play it, right? There's no confusion on where to go, what to do. You could pug it. It's probably the most pugged map in the game, and that's because on T side, players know what to do. There's defaults that they can do. There's default utility that you can throw, and you could probably get a map. I bet you could take some random like level 10 face it pug team and just have them do some T round, and if you did it enough, you tried it, as we see here, 24 times, they'd win 1 round. And that's just crazy to me that this happened. Now here comes the fun part, right? Both these teams, we know that they're bad on T side, so it's crazy, right, for them to not win a T side round, but they're both like middling teams. It's not the craziest thing to happen, right? Right? Well, that's where it gets fun, guys. Let's take a look at every comeback that I could possibly find in Counter-Strike history. The biggest comebacks that I could possibly find were a couple of 14 round in a row comebacks, right? So either 1 to 14 or 2 to 13, and then a team would win 14 in a row. I found a handful like that. So if we look here, Penta versus iBuyPower is probably the craziest, because again, it was 14 in a row. Nit versus Very Games back in 2013. This is 2013, 2014. So why don't we talk about some of these more recent games? The harder ones, Nit versus Very Games and Penta versus iBuyPower. It's hard to figure out some of those stats. So I found 14 rounds in a row for them, but you don't really get a breakdown by round. But what we do have is the FaZe versus Vitality and the Liquid versus Vitality. And can I just say for an aside here, it's crazy that Vitality is in 2 of these, with one of them that they won, one of them that they lost. It's crazy, a crazy coincidence. But again, if we look at this, it's kind of a similar story. One team runs away with it. In this case, Vitality, they won it to a 13-2 lead on CT side versus Liquid, and then they were able to reverse it, and Liquid came back, took it to overtime, but Again, the slight difference here is that the overtime was very back and forth before Liquid was able to take it away. So that's what kind of separates that. 14 rounds in a row, crazy comeback, reverses the 13-2. But again, if we compare it head to head, Vitality and Liquid were still kind of able to share some rounds there in overtime, right? So why don't we take a look at Vitality versus FaZe, which I think might be crazier, because again, that was 14-1 and went into overtime. They reversed it. FaZe was up, Vitality came back this time. But again, when you get into overtime, FaZe at least won one round. We came into the half and FaZe at least somewhat stopped some bleeding, got around, and then Vitality was able to win out. And again, that's 14 rounds in a row. Okay, so these started at either like 2-13 or 14-1. And while those are crazy score lines, it was kind of, at least there was a round. That's kind of what I'm trying to get across, the point I'm trying to get across here. And just to really nail this down, it's just straight consecutive rounds. 12 in a row to NRG, and then 16 in a row to Big. Now, the reason that I compare those two matches versus our Big versus NRG is, again, the very specific thing of streaks, of perfection, okay? When you do a comeback, one of, I think, the most fun parts about it and the hardest part about it is your back is against the wall and you can't lose, right? That's why, to me, I consider this the greatest comeback ever, not because of the round counts necessarily, or because it was just a major, because realistically it was like stage 2 and these teams aren't middling, they're not competing for the championship. Neither of them went on to win or really even compete for it. It was sort of a meaningless match in the grand scheme, but the point about it is that it was perfect. The comeback was perfect. And what I want to kind of put that into capacity for, and really just prove home why I sincerely believe that this is the greatest esports comeback ever, is because of that fact. They couldn't lose. So I wanted to look at 3-0 comebacks in real life sports, whatever term you want to use. We have esports and I guess sports. 3-0 comebacks in mostly just American sports franchises. They're probably the closest thing we have to it, and that's because of perfection, right? One of the reasons it's so hard is a team will get out to a 3-0 advantage, and then it's incredibly rare to bring that back because it's just one game, right? That team that already has that advantage just needs one. They just need one thing, one random chance to go their way, and they get theirs. Whereas the team coming back has to be perfect. They can't make mistakes. They can't just have something go against them, okay? And that's why if we take a look at all of the 3-0 comebacks, there's 5 in American sports history, right? The big 4 of American sports, there's 5 3-0 comebacks. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like I just mentioned, it's just, you have to be perfect. You can't lose. And if we take a look here, a lot of it is hockey. Now, I do kind of wonder that maybe that's an interesting story for another day, why hockey has that chance. I think hockey has a lot of momentum in it. I would say, again, not the biggest hockey fan, but I think there's a ton to do with momentum. And because it's so physical, once you get that momentum, it's easier to kind of keep it going. And you can really exert your will. So I think that's maybe why we see more in hockey. But MLB has one. And again, I think momentum there, it plays a part, right? It's a lot easier to, in baseball, that momentum and that crowd noise, all of that starts happening. And I think, you know, Boston versus Yankees in the championship series is perfect for that, because again, it's that momentum that allows you to just basically snowball that comeback. And then the NBA is actually really interesting, because I think that's where perfection is really hard, because shooting is a skill, right? And we've seen, you know, the famous like Rockets versus Lakers, where the Rockets simply just couldn't shoot, right? And one of those games happened. And that thing in basketball can happen, and that's why it's so hard to come back, because that team has to have 4 straight games where that doesn't happen to them. And that's why I honestly think here that this comeback for and against NRG by Big might be one of the greatest comebacks. Now, I'm not going to say that because I don't like to overlap them. So hey, I'll just put that out there. Maybe you guys can make the argument for it. But that level of perfection, because even in these sports games, that one game has like quarters or it has possessions, right? Like in the NFL or in the NHL, you could have a penalty, you could give up an own goal, you could commit a mistake and not have it just end the streak, right? All that you have to do is be perfect in the games, right? As long as most of the rest of the game goes for you, you can still come back. Whereas Counter-Strike, I think, is a lot different, right? Like, you have to be perfect in each one of those rounds. Each one of those minute and 45 seconds, you have to be perfect for 16 in a row. And that's why, again, it's just so mind-boggling to me that streak happened. 16 rounds in a row, I don't think is ever going to be done again. In this comparison to IRL sports and 3-0 series comebacks, I wanted to add one more thing. Because I didn't just look at American sports. That was like the easiest to get stats for and the easiest to kind of just compare directly. So I did use that primarily. But I did look. Do you want to have a guess at how many 3-0 comebacks have happened in all of sports where a series was how they decided a championship? 44. 44. So in all of sports history throughout all of these competitions, 44 3-0 comebacks have happened. So, again, I think it just adds to this whole thing of that perfection where you can't make a mistake, you can't drop a game, you can't drop a round, just makes that 16-0 even just a little bit crazier. I wanted to add another disclaimer here that I did look at other esports. It's a little bit more difficult to get stats for, and Counter-Strike is the game that I know the best, so I wanted to keep it a little bit concise. But I did look at Valorant, and you want to know, just to add an even crazier level to this, even in Valorant, I couldn't find any streaks that were above 14. And that's why I just kept it to Counter-Strike, and we'll touch on it briefly. I was able to find that Fnatic during their runs in 2023, when they were unbeatable, may have had streaks that went between maps, so multiple 12-0s that eclipsed 14-0. But as for comebacks, the craziest that I could find was, I think the one that I know, where it's the 12-5 on Sunset from Energy, sorry FNS, and a couple others where they were like pretty large comebacks. But as for 12-0 into 16-12, or even more than 14 rounds, I couldn't find that in Valorant either. And that's why I chose to keep it just at Counter-Strike. Now, I want to finish this off with a little bit of a motivation here. This is not meant to dunk on anybody. I mean, I'm sure players feel bad enough. This is not making fun of or, laughing at people. By no means am I ever anywhere close to a pro player. So I can't sit here and say, how could you not win one round, right? That's none of what I'm saying, right? All that I try to enjoy is when things happen that are, once in a lifetime, probably, or once in a very long time. I like to savor them. And the fact that I was able to watch it live, I'm interested to see if any of you were there and watched it live. But I watched it happen, and the round count, round by round, get closer, and then finally be 16-12. And I just wanted to share it. It's a moment in esports that I think is a big deal. And it's not to bring any hate or anything like that to any of the players involved. But just the fact that it happened is very interesting, and it's something to talk about. And I just wanted to share it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it for me. 16-0, that's the number to remember. If you, let me know if you guys know of any crazier streaks, any larger, perfect runs other than 16-0. Because, I mean, that's in pro play. I can't think of any. So I'm curious to see if you have any that you know of, or any other stories of comebacks that you'd like to share. Throw them in the comments. As well as if you have any other interesting esports stories or sports stories as a whole that you want me to cover, or you find interesting, throw them in the comments, please. I'm happy to hear them. I want to, happy to share and really build a community here where we share stories like that. And lastly, like if you enjoyed it, if you didn't enjoy it, if you're able to give any kind of feedback as well in the comments, I'm looking to see if people like the videos or don't, to see where I can improve, where I cannot improve. So let me know, hop in the comments. And yeah, if you liked it, like, subscribe. I'd appreciate it. if people like these, we're going to keep doing them and maybe pump them out even quicker. So let me know. But hey, I will see you next time. Peace out.